All right, so thanks for coming on. Tell us how you're doing, and your bio has a panic disorder in it, and the whole platform is mostly about anxiety. So we always love to touch on the mental health aspects if we can. How are you handling the world and
Yeah.
the state of it?
At the moment, I think I'm pretty raw. As you know from my bio, I have panic disorder, and a lot goes into that in terms of peacefully coexisting with your diagnosis. There's many, many moving things, and when outside things come into play, they tend to affect me a lot. Um, I've just come out of my 6th week post. Total hysterectomy surgery. So I'm in recovery for that. My hormones are all over the place. It was my little sister's funeral last yesterday.
Mm.
So at the moment, here and now, I'm pretty raw.
Yeah, those are all a lot of heavy things piled on top of each other. I'm so sorry to hear about all of it.
Thank you so much. That's very kind.
How are you coping?
I think it's been really hard. I live in Portugal, but I'm South Africa. So my family is in South Africa. I didn't manage to make it back for the funeral because I'm still not allowed to fly. I had some challenges with my recovery. So it's been hard to kind of feel like you're grieving in isolation. I don't think I've actually grieved yet because so far it's just been trying to do the best I can for my parents, helping them, making sure I'm doing everything I can from my side and how horrible this must be for them. And my sister passed because of addiction, so there's a lot of opinions and stigma and judgment around it that we're trying to deal with. And it's very, very hard to grieve somebody you love when you're constantly finding yourself in a space where you have to defend who they were.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I have familiarities with that as well. We
I'm
lost.
sorry.
I So I had a cousin who was like my brother. I didn't have a brother. He was the closest thing I had. He was 3 months older than me. So from the very get-go, we told everybody we were twins. We were together every evening, or most evenings, sorry, and every weekend up until we were probably 16, until once we hit 16, we got vehicles and we could drive, and I wasn't cool enough anymore. And I was always pretty mellow, and he was really into partying. And
Yeah.
it just kind of escalated from there. He was in and out of rehab. Uh, Gosh, he probably at least 3 times he went into rehab, and then he'd come out and he'd do really well for a while, and then he'd relapse on something different. So
Yeah.
it just escalated. And so it started out with like pills, and then it went to he ended up on heroin. Was
Oh,
Yeah. So we lost him. It was about 2 years, I think it is at this point. Maybe not quite. What is time? It all runs together. I'd have to like go back and look. But his birthday is actually the 22nd. So in just a
oh,
few days would be his
yeah.
birthday. He'd be 34. But you know, the stuff it does to your body is just so hard to recover from. So like, even though the he didn't OD or anything, he got the flu. He just
Mm.
got the flu. That was it. And his body was already just so racked from the
Mm-hmm.
damage that the drugs had done that he couldn't recover from it. And his heart had holes in it. So on top of the flu, he ended up getting staph, and that became septic, and the antibiotics weren't circulating through his body because his heart had holes that it wouldn't pump
Mm.
correctly. So he went in for a heart surgery, and he was Man, it was heartbreaking because he
Mm.
told us, he was like, I'm not going to wake up from it. That's going to be it. I'm not. And he cried and we all cried. And, but yeah, you have, and that's exactly what happened is he went into the heart surgery and didn't come out. And, that's the opinions of everyone. And, you know, we're all angry. Everybody's angry at how it happened. Everybody's angry at him. Everybody's angry at themselves. They're like, why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that? And the truth of the matter is that we all did the best that we could, him included. And it's just a bad situation that, we could get angry at a lot of different things in society and culture that have brought all of these drugs into our communities and the things that we're not doing to help them more and progress towards being clean for like everybody because there's a lot of opinions. People think that, you should just not do drugs. Like, okay, great. Um, and people they're like they look at me and they're like, I'm so glad that you didn't. And I'm like, I'm so glad that you had a good head on your shoulders and you knew better. And the truth of the matter is when we turned 16, had he not like ostracized me, basically, um, had he just taken me with him like he always had for 16 years prior to that, and if he had handed it to me, I probably would have been in the exact same position that he was in because he was the only person on the planet that I couldn't tell no to. He was so charismatic and he was so just everybody loved being around him. So had things gone differently, it would have just as easily been me as
Mhm.
well. And then you also have to look at it in the stance of like we're all addicted to something, whether it's food, whether it's money, whether it's alcohol or drugs, but just as well as shopping and consumerism and exercise even. Everybody's addicted to something. It's just a matter of can you channel it towards something positive or drown in the negative.
Yeah, that's so true. And, you know, for us in our scenario, it goes back to also why I was diagnosed with panic disorder. We had a very, very traumatic upbringing. We come from a history of really heavy generational trauma, a lot of undiagnosed mental illness, a lot of bizarre behavior. My sister and I were both victim to my grandfather's sexual abuse for many, many years. And it's when things like these happen that you realize how differently our soul and our mind deals with trauma and where you go with that and where it takes you and the path it leads you on. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you somebody that just perhaps couldn't deal with it in the right ways or didn't find the absolution they needed or the path they needed. And but there's no judgment about that. Like we don't know people's journeys. We don't understand their trauma. We don't know their background. We don't know what causes them to be and to act the way they do. And we're so quick to pass judgment on that. But we don't know the challenges this person faced when they walk out that door and leave to go home.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't even realize within themselves the trauma that they're dealing with, and they don't
Mhm.
realize why they're doing the things that they're doing. They just, they may know that they don't like the path that they're choosing, and yet they just keep choosing it and keep choosing it and can't seem to get out of that pattern and that habit. And we don't mental health is a whole new subject. It wasn't really talked about at all until recently, and I'm talking like the past 5+ years. I would
Hmm.
say no more than really 10.
Hmm.
Before that, it was so stigmatized. Um, you know, I have anxiety on my chart, on my medical chart, which is one of the worst things, especially as a woman, that you want on your medical chart
Yeah.
because as soon as that's on there, they are never going to take you seriously about anything ever again. They think
Yeah.
that they're just going to write everything off as anxiety and call it a day and tell you to take some deep breaths. But the human mind is so complex and so susceptible to damage and uh, altered reality states come to those who have trauma with drugs or without drugs. That's something that people don't understand is that people who have trauma, people who are living with trauma, the veil of reality is so thin that sometimes you don't even know what's real. And if you don't have people around you who understand that and they're just telling you to suck it up and like what
Yeah.
are you so whatevered about, just do the thing. Just go to work. Just go to school. Just get good grades. Just get your degree. Like it's not that hard. Just do it. And I was like, I can't breathe when I walk out the door most days.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the anxiety generation we're living in is making it really, really, really hard
Yeah.
because there is a huge misunderstanding and so much misinformation about what an anxiety disorder is. There is a big difference between stress and anxiety. I mean, there are different types of anxiety disorders. Just because you couldn't get your flavor of coffee today didn't give you anxiety.
Yeah.
That's just a pop culture word. It's almost become, I was diagnosed with panic disorder before it was cool. So I I found it extremely challenging, and I was in um, my career of choice in that life. I my expertise were in international criminal and law of war. And it was not the type of field where you would go into work and tell people you have anxiety disorder, because then you are lesser than. You are
Mhm.
not as capable as.
Yep.
You are the nervous nanny that can't handle stress,
Hmm.
or somebody that needs to be passed on because somebody that's tougher than you would be able to do this better.
Hmm.
So a lot of guilt and shame came with my diagnosis. I hid it for a very long time because I didn't want people to judge me differently.
Hmm.
Um, and today I feel like it's a word that's thrown around so carelessly that makes the battle that we who really do suffer from that diagnosis struggle with every day. We already have to try and explain ourselves. Now we're up against this wall of,
Hmm.
extra things, and um it's just so frustrating sometimes to me. Because it's really all encompassing. It affects your entire life. Like you just said, sometimes you can't even leave the house. I mean, when I have panic attacks, many times I completely stop eating because I have such a fear that I'm choking and I can't breathe. And then my mind goes into this thing that if I have food in my mouth or in my esophagus, I'm gonna choke and I'm gonna die. Um, there are many, many, many weeks where I don't even leave my property because I just don't like being around people and noise and lights. I have to force myself to do these things. Like I have issues with my gut. I have irritable bowel syndrome. There are many foods I'm intolerant to and I can't eat. And, all these things are these little tentacles that come out of your anxiety disorder. It's so all encompassing.
Hmm.
And it just frustrates me that there isn't a better understanding as to what this really is.
Yeah, because a lot of times you just need the support, honestly. You just need somebody to be like, it's okay. We
Yeah.
can take a second if you need to take a second. It took me a really long time for my husband to understand it because he's never been anxious a day in his life. He's just cool as a cucumber all the time.
Mm.
And So and mine mostly, I've tried a lot of flavors. Wouldn't recommend any of them. But the main one that's plagued me has been allergy-based anxiety. So a lot
Oh,
of people don't realize that because anxiety is just your body's alarm system that something's wrong. And
hmm.
unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what's wrong. It's just the same alarm system for everything. And so a lot of people just assume that it's overthinking. You're thinking too much. And
Hmm.
that's
You're too
sometimes,
sensitive.
yeah. Yeah. And like, yeah, that is a form of anxiety, but there are many forms of anxiety. Mine was allergy based mostly. Again, I had trauma based and I had the overthinking type and I had the postpartum type and I had um the medical type and all of the types. But I would be cooking dinner and like nothing's going on. I'm just cooking dinner. Everything's fine. Like the kids aren't even screaming and running around. They're in there doing their own thing. They're being very good. And suddenly I can't breathe. And then he'll come through and he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I'm having a panic attack." And he'll like, "Well, why?" "I don't know." "Well, what's going on?" "Nothing." "Well, what triggered it?" "I wish I knew."
Yeah.
So, but he understands now, and he'll just be like, something that helps me a lot is noise cancellation. So
Yeah.
headphones, earbuds. I have loops. I had loops. I actually had food poisoning last week and ended up in the hospital, and I had
Oh
my
no,
loops.
I'm
Yeah,
so
Uh,
sorry. That's
it's
one
okay.
of the most horrible feelings. Oh.
Yeah, literally dying.
Oh.
But I lost one of them at the hospital, so that's super sad. I'm going to have to order me some more because those are lifesavers. But I carry my earbuds around with me all the time, and sometimes I forget them. And he sees that I'm struggling. He can just tell now. We've been together for like 16 years, and he'll take his out of his pocket and just hand them to me. So like just having that
Yeah.
support makes all the difference in the world. So if they understand, he hands me his earbuds, and then if the kids are talking to me and I'm like short circuiting and like I'm trying to keep my calm, but he'll corral them over here. He'll be like, "Hey, you guys, let's go over here," or "Let's give mom some space," and
Oh,
that's a world of difference compared to like the
I'm
first
sorry. Can you hear my dogs?
no, no, and they're fine. We love bloopers. But um what kind of dogs do you have?
Labradors.
Okay. I have a lab Great Pyrenees mix. So, and then I have
Oh,
a
cool.
Great Pyrenees Shepherd mix. So I have very, very large dogs. Uh they have to stay outside because they'd be all up here like causing a commotion and during during recordings. But when I first got diagnosed with anxiety, I had a panic attack that caused chest pain.
Yeah.
I called my parents because my husband was at work and he works 12-hour swing shifts and he was on a night shift. So it was like 8 o'clock at night. I was by myself at the house with our 2-year-old at the time. And so my dad stays with our son, and my mom takes me to the hospital because I'm having chest pain. And I was pretty sure it was anxiety, right? And I texted my sister and I told her about it. And I was hoping that she would be like, "You're probably fine, Savannah. I mean, I was like 24 at the time. You're probably fine.
Yeah.
I eat pretty healthy. I'm pretty You're probably fine, Savannah." That's not what she did. She saw me on the edge of that cliff and she just kicked me off the side of it.
Oh
She
no.
goes, "Oh, you might want to get checked out. There was this girl recently that your age. She also had a 2-year-old little boy just like you, and she was having chest pain, and they thought it was nothing, but she ended up dying."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it turns out she has a lot of anxiety also, mostly from overthinking.
Oh,
But after a few hours in the hospital and a lot of tests, everything came back beautifully. I was quite healthy, and they told me it was probably just anxiety, and they prescribed me some medicine. Well, don't you know, the person that was with me just laid into me as soon as the doctor walked out of the room. They're like, what are you anxious about, Savannah? What could you possibly be stressed
Oh
about? You have
no.
a great husband who has a great job. Y'all have a nice house. Your baby's perfect. Everybody's healthy. Like, what
Oh
could you possibly
no.
be stressed out about? And then, you know, they give you the anxiety medicine, but then I was shamed for taking it. And
Yeah,
so every time I saw them, they'd be like, "Are you still taking those pills?" And, that's not helpful at all. That's not supportive.
at
And
all.
I'm so I teach yoga and meditation. I've built everything in my life around trying to fix my anxiety because it was
Yeah.
all encompassing. It was.
Yeah.
I could go on for days and days and days. I'm gonna let you talk for a little bit.
I have such sympathy and empathy because I really understand the difficulties and how it feels. The first time I've always had a problem with anxiety, but I don't think it was ever kind of defined until I was diagnosed in my 30s. And the first if I look back, that wasn't the first. But to me, in my mind, the first panic attack I had, I was also the same. I was away for work. I was doing everything I normally do. I went to a meeting. I went home to my hotel room where I was about to do a little bit more work. And all of a sudden, I just started losing vision in my right eye. And I felt a little bit disorientated. And I thought, okay, I've been really busy today. Maybe I didn't eat enough. Let me just order something up. And then I started going limp in my right arm and I started losing
Terrifying.
feeling from the knee down. My foot started uh, dragging. Then my left arm started shaking so badly up and down like this. I had to like physically restrain it to keep it from shaking. And then it felt like my tongue was going into the back of my throat. My breathing increased. I had the heart palpitations, and I just absolutely knew 110% I was going to die that night. I had like my whole life flash in front of me. I didn't say goodbye to my husband. I haven't spoken to my brother. And I tried to call the ambulance to come and help me, but I was away from my human rights work. So I was in a very good area and hospitals weren't easy to come by. So it took me like an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get to a hospital, and it was horrible. By the time I got there, I was literally on the super filthy floor crying, and I was just, please, I'm dying. I'm literally dying in front of you. Can you please just help me? And they wouldn't help me unless I paid. And it wasn't that I couldn't pay, it was literally I was shaking so badly I couldn't open my wallet to take out my credit card to give it to them because I was shaking so badly. When they finally got me in the ER, this doctor came and he just started screaming at me, "What did you take? What did you take?" I was like, "I'm not on drugs. I'm here for work." And I know in my mind, I know I'm dying. And then I passed out and I woke up the next morning in a gown in somebody else's blood. I don't even know how they found my husband, but he managed to fly down and come get me. It was horrible,
Wow.
horrible. And that's how like the roller coaster just started from there and it hasn't ended.
Do you think it was stress induced?
I think it was induced by many, many, many years of denying my trauma and denying what had happened and how to deal with it. I went straight into this human rights career and thought I was golden because I was dealing with it every single day with everybody I was helping. So obviously I'm dealing with it.
Hmm.
And we have very high pressure jobs. I traveled a lot. I slept little. So it was a whole combination of things. But as I said, I had been struggling with this for many, 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 many years, um, but never had the right help and the right pathways towards
Hmm.
that. And I was lucky enough that this was one of them. But again, it wasn't easy because now you have to go through all of these thousands of tests because they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you.
Yep.
I'm still convinced I'm dying. So I'm going from neurologist to gastroenterologist to blood tests to hormone tests. And everybody's telling me I'm fine. I'm like, but
Hmm.
I am sitting in your waiting room, literally almost now praying to die so that I don't have this reoccurring feeling anymore because it's just so unbearable.
With
How
essentially
can you
stroke
possibly,
symptoms.
yeah, how can you possibly tell me there's nothing wrong with me? They took me into hospital that night and finished a bunch of tests. And the specialist came in, and I was in a room with other people, where they just do the curtains to give a
Mhm.
little bit of privacy. He closed the curtains. He looked at me and he said to me, "You are stressed. And stress has never helped anybody." And he threw the pills at me. He's like, "Take these pills and let me know how you are in 3 weeks." Opened the curtain and went on to his real patients. And that moment destroyed me.
Sure.
It destroyed my recovery. It destroyed who I was as a person in that moment. I never in my life felt so alone and so humiliated.
Hmm.
And honestly, one of the biggest things that happen to you when you have panic attacks is that you are completely convinced you're going crazy and you're losing your mind. And what he did that night reinforced that to me. I'm crazy. I'm imagining all of this. I'm wasting real sick people's time. And it took me a very, very long time to come back from that.
Yeah, what people don't realize that so psychosomatic illnesses um are essentially like it's all in your head, but also it's real. Like your brain is causing it.
For
Yes.
you, it is reality.
Yes. Well, it is reality. It may not be like what you described were very similar to stroke symptoms. It may
Hmm.
not be an actual stroke, but it's actually happening out of your control. And it's really hard for people to understand and wrap their brains around it. It's really hard for us to use the right words to explain it. That,
Hmm.
yes, it's in your head, but that doesn't mean it's not real and actually happening and out of your control. I, my my mom and grandfather, my late grandfather, he died about 3.5 years ago. They have seizures.
Oh
Always
no.
had seizures. And I was a terrible daughter. Still kind of am. Not sorry about it. Uh, but every time she'd have a seizure, I would kind of like roll my eyes about it a little bit. And people were like, Savannah. I'm like, look, I made the connection at like 13 years old that she only had seizures right after me and her had fights.
Mm,
So I was like, she's working herself up so much that it's throwing her into a seizure. My
hmm.
grandfather did the same thing. I felt those tendencies in myself later on. Well, it really wasn't that far later on. It was probably right about the same time. And like I developed involuntary twitches that like in my neck and in my arms, and they were telling me that I was looking for attention. And that, when you have something like that that you can't control and it's happening to you, and then people are just telling you that you're fiending for attention and trying to get
Yeah.
attention, it's devastating because like then you're not getting any help whatsoever, especially like in a vulnerable place and situation and age. Um, but fast forward to it's been like 20 years at this point. Um, her seizures were increasing. And I'm telling you, she's been to every neurologist, everything. She's had all the tests run over and over and over and over again. They never could find anything wrong whatsoever. They put her on anxiety medicine, and the for first time ever, her seizure stopped, and she hasn't had one since. So,
Wow.
yes. So, psychosomatic illnesses, that's a prime, beautiful example right there. It's like
Yeah.
my mom wasn't choosing to have seizures. My grandfather wasn't choosing to have seizures. But because they had such mental, emotional weight on
Hmm.
them. The stress levels were so high, and the culture shushes it, stigmatizes it, ridicules it. There are no coping mechanisms. There's no easily accessible ways to learn emotional regulation. Everybody just shoves down their feelings and lets them fester, you know. Oh, you just be strong, be stoic, be hard, you know, don't be weak. And it has real health repercussions. You know, every time they had a seizure, they would like fall and hurt themselves and end up in the hospital. And they do test and test and test and test. Nothing was wrong. So, I mean, the doctors were always just like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Good luck. And so we were forced to go home and just wait for the next one, essentially.
Yeah.
But if more people understood that psychosomatic illnesses are real, they're tangible, they are happening, then we could bring more easily accessible things to people. You know, maybe they just needed some more yoga classes. Maybe they just needed to learn meditation. Maybe they just
Yeah.
needed mindfulness. But our culture glorizes the hustle, you know, the go, 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 do, be productive. Productive equals worth. So you better be successful at something.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure for a lot of people. You know, it takes a special type of person to well, also, we need to redefine the word success because uh, success, I believe, is just happiness and peace. And but a lot of people tie it to money and fame. And,
Hmm.
you know, I hear you're pretty successful yourself in the skincare business.
Yeah. Wow, what a segue. Oh, gee,
360.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, Figgy is about 3 years old now. And it's been a journey for sure. It wasn't my choice. I loved my career. I loved what I did. It was really honestly, I loved going to work every day. I loved working with the people I did. I loved the projects I worked on. But unfortunately, when you are so blind to your own diagnosis and your own pain, it does catch up with you.
Hmm.
And I unfortunately left it so long that I had a complete breaking. My entire life came to a stop. I had a mini stroke. I wasn't able to function normally on any given day. So I had to make a decision that I would have to step out of this career for a while, not knowing what came next. Will I be able to work again? Am I gonna just be like this for the rest of my life? And then luckily, the idea for Figgy came along. And it was really born from me just so desperate to be able to have any sort of control over any one of my symptoms because you know when you have an anxiety disorder there's so much you can't control. There's so much, like you just said, in the kitchen you don't know. If you knew why what triggered you then you wouldn't have had a panic attack. You would probably have worked to avoid it, you know. And one of the really key external symptoms for me is super sensitive skin. So, you or your listeners may know if you have eczema, psoriasis, or shingles, or any type of skin disease, it tends to get a lot worse when you're anxious or stressed.
Hmm.
And that's again because of the mind-skin connection. The brain sends cortisol into the bloodstream that shoots it to your nerve endings, and most of your most sensitive endings is just beneath the first layer of skin. That's why you get that inflammation, which makes all of these diseases worse or flare up, or you get that itching feeling like you want to scratch and you're convinced. Sometimes I really feel like there are ants walking all over me. Like I feel like things like my skin is moving, crawling, burning. Like the air is burning my skin. And I knew of this wonderful ingredient from my native South Africa. I needed to do something to challenge my mind out of this position where I was in. So I did my certificate in cosmetic chemistry and I started formulating these products to help me with my sensitive skin, to be free from everything scientifically proven to upset sensitive skin. I just needed that little bit of tangibility to get me kind of on the path toward my definition of sanity. Um, and it was a beautiful thing because that gave birth to Figgy Soul, which is my online workshops and platforms that I wrote and present, all based on my own experiences with panic disorder to help you peacefully coexist with it. Like, and I'm very clear about it. I can't cure you. I don't have a golden ticket for you. And anybody who does, I wouldn't believe. But if that's your cup of tea, then there are so many other options out there for you to consume. I can only show you the stumbling blocks I've went through, and hopefully you can avoid them and just teach you how to learn with what you've been given, how to live with what you've been given, because I think sometimes our path can be so isolating. We forget, like, we are not broken. We don't need to be fixed. We just need to be able to understand our manuals,
Mm.
our unique manuals. And you can still lead a very highly successful, highly functioning, quality life by understanding your own limitations and what you can and can't do. And not everybody can do everything in any way. So, um, yeah, that's helped me a lot on my path, and I really, really hope that it will help others too.
Yeah, integrating what you have. Yeah. That's the problem with the format of what we've been sold, to what success is supposed to look like. And it looks completely different for every single person on the planet. And you really have to go on that internal journey and really figure out what works for you, what doesn't. Back to the psychosomatic
Mhm.
illnesses, the placebo effect, you can also psychosomatic yourself into good health. You can,
Yeah,
if you believe something is going to work for you, it makes it more likely to. It doesn't mean it's going to. It means it's more likely to work. Whereas if you don't think something's going to work for you, then most likely it's not. The brain has more power over our body than I don't know, like it's we've been taught, or it's just that we didn't realize, or maybe they knew and just didn't tell us, or I don't know. It just seems woo-woo and crazy to think that our brain has literal control over
yeah,
how our inflammation is, or how our skin reacts, or how, um seizures or
yeah,
stroke symptoms, twitches. It's crazy how much is neurological, that if we just slowed down a little bit and paid more attention to what our brain is telling us, what our body is telling us, things become a lot easier to navigate and work out. But it's scary for a lot of people to slow down and sit with yourself and go internally, especially if you have all those like really dark shadows from your past,
mm,
because we're carrying all of that with us all the time, and not addressing it is absolutely making us sick. It's a weight, it's just sitting in our body waiting to be processed. And if we're avoiding it because it's painful, it's just going to fester. But as soon as
mm,
we give it a chance, as soon as we get quiet, as soon as that's why we cry in the shower, right? As soon as we get quiet, as soon as we clear the noise, it sees its opportunity to come to the surface and be seen, be heard, and it's going to. And that's uncomfortable and we don't like it, but it's painful and it can literally feel like your heart's going to explode out of your skin. But it's also necessary to face it because you can't run from it. It is going to find you. But sitting with that pain and allowing it to exist, I relate a lot of things back to children because I'm a mom, and I've been like, my oldest is fixing to turn 10, but I swear I've been doing this for 20 years. Uh, they're always like, they grow up so fast. I don't know. But um, a child who comes off as needy, if you just give them all of your attention for 5 minutes and let them get out what they need to get out and give them the reassurance they need, give them maybe a hug, they'll go off and leave you alone for, 30 minutes at a time sometimes.
Yeah.
And our emotions are the same way. Our traumas are the same way. We are the same way. Pain in our body is the same way. If you avoid it, it's just going to get louder and louder and louder, more irritating, more demanding. But if you just give it your attention for a few minutes, ask it what it needs. How do you feel? You okay? You need a hug? Then it becomes a lot easier to manage, especially in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. It's always the fear of the unknown, the monster in the closet. Once you
Mhm.
faced it, then it's not as scary anymore. But it is very scary to face that monster.
Mhm.
Um, and everybody has their own journey toward when and how they will be able and ready to do that. I just challenge any of your listeners here that may not have felt ready to do that yet to examine what the alternative is of not doing it
Mhm.
or where you are now. Is it making you happy? Is it making you worse? Is it making you sad? Is it making you not be able to show up for your loved ones, for your kids? Because that's then the alternative you don't want.
Mhm. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of everybody else. And a lot of
Correct.
people,
Yeah.
there's this whole misconception that self-care is selfish, and it's not, it's necessary because can't, if you're not feeling your best, you're more likely to be snappy, impatient, angry, say things that you don't mean. Things are going to get on your nerves a lot easier, a lot more. They're going to seem bigger than what they actually are.
Yeah.
And that just ruins your relationships. And, there's nothing more important to us than the people in our lives. That community aspect, that feeling of belonging. Um, my cat's being so obnoxious, pushing buttons, knocking things over. She wants to go outside, but she's gonna have to wait a second. Um, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
We were just talking about how hard it can be for you to face that monster in the cupboard and how bad it is for you to just keep suppressing it and not giving it its due
It
time
is.
and energy.
Yeah, and it's so simple, but it's so hard. And so, people are looking for coping mechanisms. They're looking for the magic pill that's not the pill. And
Mm,
I have to tell people all the time, I am not anti-medication. I'm not. I was on anxiety medication for, when I landed in the hospital that one time it was only like they gave me like a week's worth and told me to follow up with my doctor, and then I just didn't because I was being shamed for taking them. Well, it also, I didn't like the way it made me feel. It's like the anxiety was still there, but there was a
hmm
blanket over it. So
hmm
like it felt worse to me in the sense of like uh it didn't the anxiety was still there, but now I couldn't really move. I was just kind of conked out but conscious. It was weird. So I also didn't like it. But that probably, let's see, 6, 8 years after that. So I went without medication for 6 or 8 years after that, just trying to, meditate my way out of it.
Yeah.
And as a mom of two toddlers and running my own business and just, negative free time to do anything with, um, I ended up, well, when my grandfather got really bad. He had a weird form of dementia. It was trauma-based in dementia, not like, um, he had a hammer come down on his head, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, the
Wow.
claw with the claw ends, and so that scar tissue
Wow.
just slowly over time. So they called it dementia. Apparently, dementia is a umbrella term for a lot of
Yeah.
mental things.
Yeah.
And so it progressed really weird, really slowly. It killed him over the course of like 12 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
things were getting bad with that and COVID and small children and just all of the things piled up to where I was again having a really hard time coping. And so I was on Prozac for about 2.5 years, and that was wonderful. Until, I got to a place. I always knew I didn't want to be on the medication forever. And I've always been a, what if the world ends, huh? What are you going to do about your medication then? You can't get your medication, you're just going to die. So I'm very, eat your broccoli and exercise. Uh, and luckily I had a really good doctor who was very supportive and inquired about my life, like, hey,
Yeah.
let's figure like what's going on. And so I was like, I don't know, just life stuff. And she's like, well, but what kind of life stuff? And I was like, well, this and that and this and that. And she was like, I think that you're just struggling with caregiver stress. And so here's this to help while you're doing this, but I think that you would have a okay time getting off of it in the future when things became a little bit more spacious. And she
Yeah.
was right, and I had a very easy time transitioning off of that. But I do believe that, you don't want to rely on that forever because that is a form of escapism and it's
Hmm.
not helping you. I mean, it's helping, sure, but it's not progressing your healing in a way that you probably really want it to. And then, every medication has its side effects and its downsides. So, what are you trading off potentially uh, for this temporary band-aid, essentially? When can, like, while we're using this as a buffer, can we try to learn more and practice more and put in these habits that are going to help, um, in the long run and allow this to like this time, the buffer to help us process things and sit with ourselves and learn and understand who we are so that we can find things that work best for us. It's a balancing act, as all things are.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I really, and this is one of the things that I kind of talk about at length in my workshops is what are you supposed to be asking your psychiatrist? What should you ask your psychologist? What kind of questions should you be asking about medications if they want to go down that route? I'm also not against medication. I'm still on medication. Um, but it's definitely a very personal choice.
Hmm.
And I often remind people for some reason especially when we're super traumatized and you don't know what's happening to your body and you're trying to figure it out, we're not very concerned with asking questions. We just assume it's a doctor telling me this, so yes, I'll take the medication. But you are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say, I don't think this doctor is vibing with me. I don't think he's asking enough questions or giving me enough leniency. Let me get a second opinion.
Hmm.
It's totally acceptable to do that. For me, in my personal situation, I've been blessed with a wonderful team following me. I still do my checkups every 6 months. Um, they are very on board with me also eventually wanting to go off and staying on a very low dose. But there were for sure side effects, especially the first 21 days when you go on to the medication because it takes 21 days to start working. Um, but for me, in my case, I was just at such a level of not being able to function.
Hmm.
The quality of my life with the help of the medication is so much better
Sure.
than it was without. And that was the trade-off for me. Are the symptoms, which I now have very little of, but were they um, as bad as what my life looked like without the tablets? Or was the quality of life that I was getting because of it worth, you know, this kind of balancing act? And every single person needs to decide that for themselves because at the end of the day, it's your body.
Hmm.
You're going through it. You're living through all of these symptoms. You're the one that's experiencing it. So you need to be able to make the call and to be kind enough and brave enough for yourself to make sure that you are within a medical guidance or medical team that's on board with your plan for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you have to make the decision, and that can be really hard, especially when you have you know, for one, people around us that don't understand and aren't so supportive, and maybe have opinions about
Hmm.
this or that. But
Oh yeah, I have many, many opinions.
yes, so many opinions. But also, we want to put doctors up on this pedestal and just take everything that they say
Yes.
for face value. And that's not always the best option. You
Mm-mm.
know, they don't really have time to sit there and get to know you and your body. So they're just going to be like, well, here's something that works for most people. Here you go, try it
Hmm.
out. And then they don't really have time to sit there and, you know, you have to do the work yourself, and that's unfortunate. But you have to be your own knight in shining armor. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. And but a lot of people don't, that's it's scary to take responsibility for yourself. You know, we want the doctor to just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to
Yeah,
do and I'll do it. And you know, it's hard, but it's worth it. The work is worth it on the other end for sure.
it really is. And if you think about it another way, whether you have an anxiety disorder or not, everybody has something that is a challenge for them in their life. Everybody has something they're struggling with. For you, it may be anxiety. For me, it may be anxiety and trauma, or for somebody else, it may be some kind of heart illness they're dealing with, or um, just the circumstances of where they live, socioeconomic issues, poverty, hunger. Everybody has something that they are dealing with. So we need to remind ourselves of that, that yes, it looks different, but we're not alone.
Are there things that you do in your routine that help you manage it a little bit, like
Yeah.
limiting scrolling and news and
Yeah, my key to peaceful coexistence, and I do have relapses. I will always have relapses because there will always be triggers that I cannot control. But my key is understanding my body, listening to my body, and getting to know my triggers. And that has been a journey. That doesn't just happen. You
mm-mm.
have to be in tune with how you feel. You have to immediately be able to be aware of a feeling like, oh, okay, I need to pay attention to this. And I do that mostly by having changed my entire lifestyle. I have to exercise a certain amount of time a day to release that pent up stress, anxiety. This is my office, but I
Same.
have the little bowl and the trampoline and everything. I'm on there a couple of times a day. Every time I start feeling, I I try and release some of that energy. I always have protein snacks with me because when I get hungry, I get shaky and nauseous, and that's a trigger for me. One of the key things for me is making sure that I don't have enough sleep, but that I have quality sleep so that I wake up refreshed. So when I go home at night, my phone goes into a separate bedroom where it goes on charge. And I don't see it again until the next day. At least an hour and a half before I want to lay my head down on the pillow, I start my bedtime routine. Meditation, reading a book, knitting, listening to an audiobook or a podcast, just like getting myself into that calmer zone, very dim lighting and all of those things. I do practice meditation, but I'm not I'm not all for the yogi pose meditation because when I'm so anxious, it really doesn't work for me. So meditation for me is anything that calms my mind, whether that's gardening or sitting on my swing, staring into space, like anything that gets my mind into a different zone. Having an SOS kit with me. Do I know where my SOS medication is? Does the person, my support structure also know? headphones, like you said, noise canceling. It's all of these things that you slowly learn are your triggers, and then trying to live your life alongside these things in a way that helps you manage your sensitivity with it. And I know this is an awful answer because people, especially if you're like me, if you've just been diagnosed and you go through these periods again and again and again, it's like, okay, when am I going to be normal again? When am I going to be fixed? Like, what can I do? And there just unfortunately isn't that answer. And I've had to learn that the hard way. It's
Right.
everything in one. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And all of those little bits count up during the day and then during the week and then during the month. And then when that huge stressful situation comes, you're like, oh, wow, I'm super anxious, but I didn't have a panic attack.
Hmm.
So all of the calm that I've been banking these last couple of weeks have helped me.
Hmm.
And that's unfortunately the only thing that's helped for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what people don't realize is that you don't really cure it. You just learn how to ride the waves a little bit better.
Yeah, correct. And if you can do that, then you can also start to see the blessings that come with it, you know?
Hmm.
Like, so yeah, okay, I have panic attacks and I can be anxious sometimes, but that also gives me an incredible sense of intuition and I know exactly how to listen to it. And it's helped me immensely in big business decisions and
Hmm.
personal relationships when I need to choose if this person is right for me or not. That's a gift that comes
Hmm.
with that, you know? It helps me see things with my daughter that others may have missed. Like, you look a little bit off today. Did something happen at school? Is there something you
Hmm.
want to tell mommy? These are all gifts that come with that. But we're so consumed by what society is telling us it should be, and that we're too sensitive and we're the problem somehow, and that we're broken somehow or defective somehow. Um, when actually we have such unique qualities that we can bring to, interpersonal relationships, to workplaces,
Hmm.
business environments, meetings. And it's wonderful to see that other side to it as well.
Yeah, that human authenticity is something that we've all been starved of, especially in the business world, especially in the consumerism of like products and whatnot. The
Mm.
corporate greed has really overtaken marketing and our products. And, there's a lot of skincare products out there that are designed to make your skin worse. Like it'll clear it up for a little bit, but then it comes back with full force, and it's designed to do that so that you'll keep buying the product.
Yeah, oh, skincare. There's so much one can say about it, but the key thing there is just you have to be able to understand what is your skin type? Like, what are you looking to treat and to avoid? Because using anything that's in contrast to what you're trying to achieve is definitely not going to work out well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole subject. We could probably do a whole,
Yeah.
I'm sure you could talk about it for a whole episode.
Oh yeah, I have many opinions.
Well, maybe we'll have you on again one day and we can hear all of the opinions.
I love that.
Cool. So, tell everybody, plug whatever you like, tell them where to find
Oh,
you.
thank you. Oh, you can find us on figgybeauty.com. That's our online store. You can find the Figgy Soul courses there. Um, Mid-April, you can find us at Target. And you can also find us online through our online store in the UK. And also in mid-April, we'll have our own store in Scotland where you can also come and visit us.
Cool. And I think I would like to have you on again to talk about the skincare and the products and the
Yeah,
business and all of
of
that. We had to
course.
get the anxiety stuff out of the way, mental health, but I'd love to discuss how that journey's been. And because it seems so daunting, you to have a product and you have to manufacture and then you have to market and you have to figure out how to get into these like Target, like
Yeah.
people want to know stuff like that. So I'd love to have you back on and we can talk about all
Thank
that.
you.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
yeah. So we'll let everybody go. We'll let you have the rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.